Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
I'm sitting here looking at what just happened with Tatsuya Imai and the Philadelphia Phillies, and I need to get something off my chest because this entire situation perfectly encapsulates everything that's been frustrating about this offseason. The Phillies had a chance to make a real splash, to add a legitimate arm to their rotation, to show the fan base that they're serious about winning right now. And instead, we're watching Imai head to Houston while Philadelphia sits on their hands doing absolutely nothing. And before anyone jumps in with excuses about how the contract structure wouldn't work or how they were never really that close, let me explain why that's exactly the problem. This franchise is operating with self-imposed limitations that are actively preventing them from competing at the highest level, and it's time someone calls it out. Let's start with the contract details because this is where the entire thing falls apart. Imai agreed to an $18 million base salary with Houston, plus a posting fee of almost $10 million, with another $3 million available in incentives. The total package isn't breaking the bank. This isn't some massive nine-figure commitment that would cripple the organization for years. But here's the kicker. The deal includes opt-outs after each season, giving Imai the flexibility to leave if things don't work out or if he wants to test free agency again when his value is higher. And apparently, according to Dave Dombrowski himself, that's a deal breaker. The Phillies have decided as an organizational policy that they don't do opt-outs. Period. End of discussion. Dombrowski went on a podcast back in December and just flat out said that opt-outs are something Philadelphia doesn't offer, that they're upfront about it with agents and players, and that's just how they operate. And I'm sitting here thinking, are you actually serious right now? You're going to publicly announce that you've taken yourself out of the running for every single high-level free agent who might want that kind of flexibility in their contract? Because here's the reality of modern baseball free agency. Elite players want opt-outs. They want control over their careers. They want the ability to leave if the team isn't contending or if they can get more money elsewhere. That's just how the market works now, especially with international players coming over from Japan who might not be sure about committing to one organization for multiple years without seeing how things go first. By drawing this hard line in the sand and refusing to budge on opt-outs, the Phillies are essentially telling every top-tier free agent that they're not serious about competing for their services, and then they act surprised when guys like Imai choose other teams. You can't have it both ways. You can't refuse to offer the contract structures that players want and then complain about missing out on talent. Make a decision. Either you want to win championships and you're willing to do what it takes to acquire the best players available, or you're more concerned about maintaining organizational control and financial flexibility at the expense of actually improving the roster. What makes this even more frustrating is that we're talking about an $18 million annual commitment. This isn't Shohei Ohtani money. This isn't a contract that's going to hamstring the franchise for a decade. The Phillies have one of the highest payrolls in baseball. John Middleton has repeatedly said he doesn't care about spending money if it means winning World Series trophies. So why are we nickel and dimming over contract structures for a mid-level starting pitcher? If Imai wanted an extra couple million to waive the opt-out clauses, you pay it. If he wanted a higher base salary to compensate for giving up that flexibility, you negotiate. But apparently that conversation never even happened because the Phillies had already decided they weren't playing that game. And now Houston gets a quality arm for their rotation, while Philadelphia continues to stand pat with a roster that hasn't gotten meaningfully better since getting bounced from the playoffs. This is what organizational arrogance looks like. This is what happens when a front office is more concerned about winning negotiations than winning baseball games. Let's talk about the bigger picture here because the Imai situation is just one piece of a much larger problem. This entire offseason has been a masterclass in underwhelming moves and missed opportunities. The biggest headline for the Phillies was Kyle Schwarber re-signing, and don't get me wrong, I love Schwarber. He's the heart and soul of this team. He's bought into the culture, he wants to be in Philadelphia, and keeping him was absolutely the right move. But here's the thing, according to reports, Schwarber had offers from other teams, including the Pirates and the Reds, that might have actually paid him more money, but he told them it wasn't necessary because he wanted to stay. That's loyalty. That's a player who believes in what this organization is trying to build. But loyalty only matters if the organization backs it up by putting a winning team around him. And right now, I'm not seeing that commitment. Outside of Schwarber, what have the Phillies actually done? They signed some bullpen arms, they made minor moves around the edges, and that's it. That's the entire offseason so far. Meanwhile, JT Realmuto is still a free agent. The organization keeps saying they want him back, that they hope he returns, but hope isn't a strategy. Either make him an offer he can't refuse or move on and find a replacement. This weird limbo where everyone just assumes he'll eventually re-sign without actually getting a deal done is exactly the kind of passive approach that leads to disaster. What happens if Realmuto decides he wants to test the market more seriously? What happens if another team swoops in with a better offer because Philadelphia was too busy hoping instead of acting? The same thing applies to the starting rotation. Ranger Suarez is a free agent, and by all accounts, it doesn't sound like he's coming back. So you're losing a quality starter and replacing him with what exactly? The outfield is still a question mark. Nick Castellanos is still on the roster, despite constant rumors that the team wants to move him. There's work to be done everywhere you look, and instead of addressing any of it with urgency, the front office seems content to let the offseason drift by without making any significant improvements. And here's what really gets under my skin. John Middleton, the owner, has said all the right things publicly. He's gone on record saying that he doesn't care about how much money he makes or loses, that all he cares about is winning World Series trophies, that he bought this team to bring championships to Philadelphia. That quote fires me up every single time I hear it, because that's exactly the mentality you want from an owner. That's what separates great organizations from mediocre ones. But where is that mentality showing up in the actual decisions being made this offseason? Where's the urgency? Where's the willingness to go out and get the best players available regardless of cost? Because right now it feels like the Phillies are perfectly happy being the team that's always in the mix, always getting their name mentioned in rumors, always being connected to big-name free agents, but never actually closing the deal. Their content being the bridesmaid at every wedding, but never the bride. And that's not good enough. Not with this core. Not with this championship window that's actively closing while we waste time. Look at the teams that have won World Series recently. The Rangers went all in. The Astros have been aggressive year after year, building and maintaining a championship roster. The Dodgers spend whatever it takes to acquire the best talent available. Those teams understand that windows don't stay open forever. They understand that you have to strike while you have your core players in their prime. The Phillies have Bryce Harper, they have Zach Wheeler, they have Kyle Schwarber and Trea Turner and Aaron Nola. This is the time, this is when you're supposed to be pushing all your chips into the center of the table and going for it. Instead, we're watching a front office that seems more concerned with financial prudence and organizational control than with actually winning. And the most frustrating part is that it's completely self-imposed. Nobody's forcing the Phillies to draw hard lines on opt-out clauses. Nobody's forcing them to be conservative in free agency. These are choices being made by the people running the organization, and those choices are actively hurting the team's ability to compete. Jeff Passan said something recently that I think perfectly captures where things stand. He was asked about the chances of the Phillies adding another big bat through trade or free agency, and his response was basically that it's possible, but they're probably not at the top of the list for teams willing to pay full price right now. He mentioned that we're getting to the point in the winter where players are getting anxious because spring training is less than 7 weeks away, and when players get anxious, prices start to drop, and maybe the Phillies can swoop in and grab someone on the cheap. And I'm sitting here reading that thinking, is that really the plan? We're just going to wait around hoping someone gets desperate enough to sign a below-market deal so we can save a few bucks. That's not how championship teams operate. Championship teams identify the players they need and go get them. They don't wait for bargains. They don't hope the market comes to them. They create their own opportunities by being aggressive and decisive. There are still quality players available. Bo Bichette could be available in a trade. Kyle Tucker is sitting there as one of the best outfielders in baseball. Alex Bregman is still on the free agent market. Any one of those guys would immediately make this roster better and give the Phillies a legitimate chance to compete for a World Series. But instead of going after them, instead of making the moves that need to be made, we're hearing about how the team is being cautious and waiting for the right opportunity. and all these other phrases that basically mean they're not doing anything and time is running out. Spring training is right around the corner. The roster isn't getting any better sitting around waiting. Something needs to happen, and it needs to happen soon. The catching situation needs to be resolved. The outfield needs to be addressed. The rotation needs another arm, especially if Suarez isn't coming back. There's work to be done, and Dave Dombrowski needs to stop talking about wanting to improve and actually go out and do it. So yeah, missing out on Tatsuya Imai isn't the end of the world. He's not a superstar. He's not someone who is going to single-handedly transform this rotation, but it's symbolic of a bigger problem. It's another example of the Phillies being in the conversation but not closing the deal. It's another missed opportunity in an offseason full of them. And if this is what the final roster looks like when spring training starts, if Kyle Schwarber re-signing and some bullpen additions are the only meaningful moves this team makes, then this offseason has been an absolute failure. I refuse to believe that's where we're headed. I have to think there are moves being worked on behind the scenes that just haven't been announced yet. But the clock is ticking, and every day that passes without significant improvement is another day wasted in a championship window that won't stay open forever.